What's going on, filmmakers? I'm Alexandru, and today I'm gonna take you behind the scenes on a motorcycle commercial. So before we start this behind the scenes, I want to wish you guys a happy new year, and I wish 2022 is going to be your best year and you're going to go to the top and succeed all your wishes and business proposals. So what I want to say is that I was really excited to share this behind the scenes with you guys because I think it turned out really cool, and I'm really curious about your opinion on how this one turned out, especially because it took me only 2 hours to shoot the entire thing. Because of this, I want to get a little bit behind the scenes and talk a little bit about my lighting choices and my gear choices. So what I want to say first is what camera I used. And for this project, I used the Sony FX3 with the 50mm f1.2. And I chose this setup because I really love the 50mm f1.2, and I wanted to use autofocus on gimbal. So I have a few gimbal shots that usually when I did them in the past, I had a follow focus control, or I had my focus stopped down at a value and I was trying to keep my camera in focus based on that value. But now with the FX3 and with Sony lenses, it's so easy to make these gimbal shots because you don't lose time, and the shots pretty much you get them first try, and this is really amazing. And also this camera is pretty stable on a gimbal if you have the stabilization control turned on. So this is how exactly my setup looked. Pretty simple, nothing too complicated. I didn't even have an external monitor because I already know how to judge exposure in S-Log3 on this little monitor. So I knew that the focus isn't an issue. I knew how to make my exposure, and everything went really fast. Now, for this behind the scenes, I don't really have behind the scenes footage, but we're gonna go shot by shot and I'm gonna explain you all my lighting choices. So for my lighting, I only choose to use 2 lights. And that's mostly because I wanted to have a really dark mood, and I knew that I don't need that much lights. So for that, I used a NANLITE MixPanel 150 with the softbox and a grid on it. And I also used a NANLITE PavoTube 15X, which is the new PavoTubes that are amazing and their battery lasts quite a lot. So I have here on my tablet, and I'm gonna record so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So we're gonna start with the first shots I did. So we filmed most of the shots in a warehouse, which is pretty industrial, and there's not a lot of light going in. So we started off with a pretty clean plate where we don't have to block lighting or anything like that. So we have a little bit of light right here in the back, which is coming from this window, which is not that powerful, but on the other hand, we have the light of the bike, which I used a little bit of haze in order to make it visible. So we had a little bit of haze to give a little bit of atmosphere to all of our lighting. And in order to light the bike, I had my mix panel on a stand right here. And it was giving me light somewhere around here. And because I'm using the grid on the light, I can control my light a little bit better. So even the light is from the side, I don't have light spillage here in the back, which is really, really good because I can create contrast. And this is what I want to do whenever I shoot commercials that are a little bit more dramatical. I kind of want to shoot and control my lights in order to be as dramatic as possible. So the light comes on the bike, it gives us really nice contrast, and we have here shadow, We have here a little bit on the wheel, and everything looks really good. I think it looks really balanced. And to be honest, this is just one lighting setup. This is what you can achieve with one light and a little bit of haze. I think this is really impressive. Of course, I could have used a little bit of backlight, but I have backlight from that window, and it kind of gives me a three-dimensional effect here. So even though we don't have lighting here that much, it's still a little bit of 3D effect, because you can see it kind of separates the bike from the background. For my second lighting, what I did is I stopped my side light. So I stopped the MixPanel 150, and instead I used the PavoTube, which I placed it on the ground, and this was giving me a little bit of light. And I set up my PavoTube to be as stroboscope, so it kind of gives me a lot of dynamics, and it gives me an interesting effect, because I knew that this whole commercial will be very dynamic in order to portray the power of the bike. So when this turns off, we still have light on the bike, which comes from the backlight, which are these windows in the back. So you can see them right here, and it gives me a backlight to the bike, so I still have three-dimensionality and separation, but I really love how this haze makes this light streak really nice. So there isn't that much haze, but we can still feel it. So without haze, we wouldn't be able to see this light streak and also this background, which looks like it's hazy. So really important to have haze, not on every project, but on most of the projects I used haze, because I think it's really, really important. So I don't know if you noticed, but for this commercial, we only used one location, and to spice up things, we only changed the lighting in the same location, and it kind of gives a little bit of contrast between shots, and it doesn't look the same locations only because we switched up lighting. So I think whenever you have only one location, if you want to spice things up and if you want to make things look different, all you got to do is change your lighting, and you can change the mood and the atmosphere only from lights. Next shot was pretty interesting, and this is mainly due to the fact that I had a little bit of fun with both of the lights. So I still had my mix panel here on the side, and I turned it on again. And this time I had a little bit of light on myself and on the pants, on the bike, on the wheel, and also a little bit on the ground. And I also had my PavoTube here on the left that was also set off on stroboscope to intensify the action. So basically, I was drifting the bike, and Chipri was filming me because I was the stuntman on this one. And because we have a little bit of dust and a little bit of haze, we have this beautiful light streak, and this, you can see the dust here, which looks really nice. Again, we have haze in the back and a little bit of backlight on my bike and on myself. So really simple setup, but really efficient, because we have all these elements in the background. We have this stroboscope that was on and off, so it gives quite a lot of intensity, and I really like how it looks. So next shot is pretty interesting. So in order to spice things up a little bit and have a little bit of diversity, we changed the angle, but we stayed in the same location. So basically, I have my mix panel right here, and because I'm using the grid, the lighting is not going this way. So this is how the lighting would look without the grid, but because we have the grid, the lighting goes only like this. And this is what basically the grid does. It kind of limits your angle of where your lighting goes. And I think it's really important to use this grid because it allows you to control your lighting much, much better. So we have the grid and the mix panel right here that's giving me this light, and it looks really nice. And I don't know if you noticed, but what I try to do is I always try to put my lighting a different angle than where the camera is. So on the previous shots, all my lighting was from the right. So it was from this side. Now, my lighting doesn't come from this side because it wouldn't look so pleasing. Instead, it comes from the back. So because of this, because I have the light coming from this side, it looks more cinematic. And this is an advice that I think you should take whenever you light, is don't really try to put your lights from the same angle as your camera. So our camera is, let's say, right here. And if the lighting comes from here, then it wouldn't look really good and it wouldn't look cinematic. And instead, what you can do is you can put your lights from this side, from the side, or as a backlight. And this is how you would achieve a more cinematic lighting effect. So I know a lot of you guys are really curious on how to achieve the slow rolling shutter effect. And it's pretty simple. Basically, with the Sony FX3, you have the possibility to go with the shutter speed really low at 1x4. And when you're shooting like that, it's kind of hard to judge your focus or even the movements because all of the image is a little bit delayed. So what I do is I move the camera like a lunatic, and I leave the camera on autofocus and it does the job. And I kind of try and move things in a way that it keeps my bike in focus, but it makes the background blurry because it gives a really nice effect. And when I go in post-production, I just double its speed so it looks a little bit more fast and more dynamic, and that's it. Now, going back onto the screenshots, and this is the last screenshot we're gonna talk about. So I had my mix panel right here, which was giving light this way and also on the bike. So I increased a little bit its intensity in order to have my light travel a little bit further. And I really like the fact that we have here light on this one, but on this one we have it a little bit backlight, but only on the sign Talaria we have light. And in the back I have my PavoTube 15X, and I set the PavoTube on color red. But what I did is I put this light a little bit more in the back so it doesn't heat my bike that much, because I didn't want to have red that much on the bike. So I kind of limited the red until here. And from this part, I have normal lighting. And we still have a little bit of haze, but not that much, because I wanted to have a little bit more contrast on the final shot. And what you can do usually to create more contrast or less contrast is you can work with your lights this way. So let me show you. So basically what you can do in order to have more contrast or less contrast is, if you have your light here, and if you have it from the side, and if you increase your intensity on this light that much, so you can change your exposure, and let's say you have here 50%, and your exposure is at, let's say, ISO 800. So if you increase this light that much in order to lower your ISO, then your background will become more darker. Now, if you want to balance your image with the background, you have to drop down your light to 20% and increase the ISO a little bit more in order to balance the light with the background. So this is usually a technique that I do when, let's say, I have way too much lighting in a location. If I want to shoot a little bit more dramatical, all I have to do is increase my light intensity and lower my exposure index so I can debalance, let's say, or so I can make a difference between my subject and the background. So yeah, overall, I hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes. I think it's a little bit more different. I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to subscribe. And let me know what you think about this setup where I show you shot by shot from my commercials, if you enjoy it or not. Until next time, I'm Alexandru, and thanks a lot for watching. Cheers!